The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It hammered against the cracked windshield of the rusted Honda Civic like accusations. Each drop a reminder of every wrong turn, every missed opportunity, every door that had slammed shut in their faces. Sarah pressed her forehead against the cold glass, watching the water stream down in rivulets that blurred the world outside into an impressionist painting of despair. In the back seat, her daughter Emma slept fitfully, curled beneath a donated blanket that smelled of mothballs and broken promises. The gas gauge needle rested firmly on empty. The last of their money, $17.43, sat in Sarah's pocket like a cruel joke. She closed her eyes and allowed herself just for a moment to imagine what warmth felt like. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. 6 months ago, Sarah had a job, an apartment, and a future that didn't require sleeping in parking lots. Then the factory closed. The landlord wouldn't wait. The system that was supposed to catch people like her had too many cracks, and she'd fallen through every single one. Now, as midnight approached on a Thursday in late October, she sat in a grocery store parking lot with her 7-year-old daughter, whispering prayers to a universe that seemed to have stopped listening. "Mommy." Emma's small voice cut through the darkness. "I'm cold." Sarah's heart cracked a little more. "I know, baby. Come up here with me." Emma climbed over the console, all bony knees and tangles of brown hair, and nestled into her mother's lap. At 7, she was still small enough to fit. Though Sarah knew these moments were numbered. Everything felt numbered now. The miles left before the car gave out completely. The hours before they'd have to find another parking lot. The days before winter made sleeping in a car impossible. "Are we going to find a house tomorrow?" Emma asked, her voice muffled against Sarah's chest. Sarah's throat tightened. She'd been dodging this question for weeks, offering platitudes about soon, and maybe, and we'll see. But tonight, with the rain drowning out the rest of the world, and exhaustion pulling at her bones, she couldn't find the energy to lie. "I don't know, sweetheart," she whispered. "I just don't know." Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then so softly, Sarah almost didn't hear it. "We have nowhere to go." The words hung in the air like smoke, and Sarah felt something inside her finally break. She'd been holding it together through sheer force of will, but those 5 words from her daughter's mouth shattered whatever was left of her strength. A sob escaped before she could stop it, and then another. And suddenly she was crying. Really crying for the first time since this nightmare began. She didn't hear the knock on the window at first. When it came again, louder, more insistent, Sarah's body went rigid with fear. It was after midnight. The parking lot was empty except for their car. She'd been so careful to park under the one working street light to keep the doors locked to stay invisible. Through her tears, she could make out a figure standing outside the driver's side window. A man, middle-aged, wearing a soaked flannel jacket. Her hand moved instinctively to the lock, even though it was already engaged. The man held up both hands, palms forward in a gesture of peace. Then he pointed to his ears and shook his head, miming that he couldn't hear her through the glass, against every instinct, screaming at her to drive away. Except she couldn't. Not without gas. Sarah cracked the window half an inch. "I'm sorry to bother you," the man said, his voice gentle, tinged with an accent she couldn't quite place. "I work overnight at the warehouse across the street. I've seen your car here the last few nights." He paused, and Sarah saw something in his eyes that looked like understanding, not judgment. "I wanted to make sure you were okay." "We're fine," Sarah said automatically, the lie brittle as old glass. "Just waiting for someone." The man glanced at his watch. 11:47 p.m., and then back at her with eyes that said he knew exactly what kind of waiting this was. "My name is Marcus Fletcher. I manage the storage facility on Cedar Street, about 2 miles from here." He pulled a slightly damp business card from his pocket and held it through the crack in the window. "We have a small apartment above the office. It's not much, just 1 room, a bathroom, a kitchenette. The last manager lived there, but he moved out 3 months ago. It's been sitting empty." Sarah stared at the card, not daring to reach for it. This had to be a scam, a trap, a setup for something terrible. People didn't just offer strangers apartments. Not in real life. As if reading her mind, Marcus continued, "I know how this sounds. You don't know me. You have every reason to be suspicious. But here's the thing. 15 years ago, I was where you are. Different city, different circumstances, but the same fear. The same not knowing where we'd sleep or how we'd eat. A stranger helped us then. Didn't ask questions. Didn't want anything in return. Just helped because he could. Marcus's voice grew thick with emotion. He told me that someday, when I was able, I should do the same for someone else. I've been waiting for the right moment. I think this might be it. Sarah's hand trembled as she finally took the card. I don't understand. You're just giving us a place to stay. Not giving, Marcus corrected gently. The facility needs someone to handle after-hours calls, keep an eye on things. Most of our business is online now, but we still get the occasional emergency. If you could manage that, answer the phone, help people who get locked out, basic stuff. I can pay you minimum wage for about 20 hours a week. It's not much, but it's something, and the apartment comes with the job. Emma had been silent throughout the exchange, but now she sat up straighter in her mother's lap. Does the apartment have heat? She asked, her voice small but hopeful. Marcus smiled, and it transformed his entire face. Yes, sweetheart. It has heat and a real bed and a shower with hot water that works most of the time. What's the catch? Sarah heard herself ask even as every cell in her body screamed at her to say yes to take this miracle before it evaporated. What do you really want? Marcus's expression grew serious. I want to sleep at night knowing I did something that mattered. I want to look my daughter in the eye. She's about your girl's age and know I'm teaching her that people help people. That's it. That's the whole catch. He pulled out another card and a pen, scribbling something on the back. This is my wife's number. Call her right now if you want. She'll tell you I'm not a psychopath. She'll also probably tell you I'm terrible at fixing the garbage disposal and I leave my socks everywhere. But the important thing is I'm legitimate. Sarah's vision blurred with fresh tears. But these felt different. These felt like the first rain after a drought. Painful and cleansing and necessary. Why us? She whispered. Because you're here, Marcus said simply. Because your daughter deserves to sleep in a warm bed. Because you look like you've been fighting so hard for so long. And maybe you could use someone in your corner for a change. He stepped back from the car. The address is on the card. I'll be there in the morning at 9 o'clock to show you around. No pressure. If you decide it's not right, no hard feelings, but the offer's real and it's yours if you want it. He turned and began walking back toward the warehouse. His figure slowly disappearing into the rain and darkness. Sarah sat frozen, holding the card like it might disintegrate, staring at the address printed in neat block letters, 847 Cedar Street, Unit B. Mommy. Emma's voice was barely audible. Is it real? Sarah looked down at her daughter's face, at those wide eyes that had seen too much uncertainty for 7 years of life, and made a decision. Maybe it was desperation. Maybe it was faith. Maybe it was just that she had nothing left to lose except the last shreds of hope and she wasn't ready to surrender those quite yet. I think it might be, baby, she said, starting the car with shaking hands. I think it just might be. They used the last of their gas to drive the 2 miles to Cedar Street. The storage facility was exactly where Marcus said it would be, a modest 1-story building with rows of orange garage doors stretching behind it. Above the main office, Sarah could see a window with a light on. He'd called ahead, she realized. He'd turned the lights on so they wouldn't arrive to darkness. The apartment was small, exactly as he'd described. 1 room with a double bed, a kitchenette along one wall, a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in, but it was clean and warm, and the bed had actual sheets and blankets. On the tiny kitchen counter, someone, Marcus's wife, probably had left a grocery bag with bread, peanut butter, milk, and a box of cereal. Emma ran to the bed and collapsed onto it with a sound of pure joy. It's so soft, Mommy. Feel how soft it is. Sarah stood in the doorway, overwhelmed by the simple miracle of walls and a ceiling and heat. She thought about all the doors that had closed. All the people who had looked through her like she was invisible. All the times she'd been told there was no room, no help, no hope. And then she thought about Marcus Fletcher, a stranger who saw a beaten-down woman crying in a parking lot and decided that mattered. She whispered into the quiet apartment. To no one and everyone, we have somewhere to go now. The next morning, Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through the window and her daughter, sleeping peacefully beside her, the lines of worry finally smoothed from her small face. She called Marcus to accept the job, her voice steady for the first time in months. Thank you, she said. And those two words carried the weight of everything. Gratitude, relief, disbelief, hope. You don't have to thank me, Marcus replied. Just promise me something. Someday when you're on the other side of this, when things are better and they will be better, promise you'll help someone else. That's how this works. That's how we change things. Sarah looked around the small apartment at her daughter, beginning to stir at the possibility of tomorrow no longer feeling like a threat. I promise, she said. I absolutely promise. And she meant it, because she'd learned something in that rain-soaked parking lot. Something that would stay with her long after the hard times had passed. The world was full of closed doors and empty systems and impossible circumstances. But it was also full of people like Marcus Fletcher, people who understood that kindness didn't require a reason. That helping didn't need a justification beyond simply being able to help. 3 years later, Sarah would stand in that same parking lot on a rainy November night, watching a young mother with 2 children sleeping in a van. She would walk over, knock gently on the window, and say the words that had once been said to her. I wanted to make sure you were okay. And the cycle would continue, rippling outward in ways she couldn't measure, but could feel in every fiber of her being, proof that sometimes when someone whispers that they have nowhere to go, the right answer, the only answer, the answer that changes everything is simply, you do now.